Never forget Saul Alinsky's first rule for radicals, or one of his key rules for radicals, and that is ridicule is the most powerful weapon. And not forgetting that, we have Stephen Colbert, Seth Meyers, and others on late night still ridiculing Donald Trump for Sweden attack. And of course, this happened on Saturday, where Donald Trump said, look at what's happening last night in Sweden. And of course, what he was talking about was Tucker Carlson's interview with a filmmaker talking about the violence in Sweden, not a specific event, not something that happened on Friday night itself, but of course they had the hashtag, this is Stephen Colbert, never fjord get, and they're mocking him, talking about showcasing Swedish products like Swedish fish candy, IKEA, and ABBA with the tribute never fjord get. And then we had Seth Meyers saying, it turns out what Trump was referring to was not a terror attack in Sweden, but a segment that he saw the night before on Fox News about refugees in Sweden. So far, so true. He said, so Trump literally saw something on Fox News and confused it for reality. There you go. Now, the police say that their comments were taken out of context. So what we see here from the Washington Post is not only a defense of the immigrants, but also an attack on Donald Trump. And of course, the Washington Post, Jeff Bezos, has made it essentially the paper of record for the CIA and the deep state. This is the way they spin it. Even though we had riots on the same night, same day that they're making fun of Donald Trump yesterday, there were massive riots in Sweden. So what do? They spin it, strongly imply that A, Donald Trump is responsible for this. He provoked this. And B, we're going to roll back the narrative of these police who said that there's violence in the cities. And we're going to talk about both of those things and show you where this has been headed. For several months, we've been talking about what's going on. Actually, for the last year, we've been talking about the rising crime rates and other issues. But let's take a look first at how the Washington Post spins this. They say the riot comes 2 days after President Trump implied that immigrants had perpetrated a recent spate of violence. Just 2 days after President Trump provoked widespread consternation. So they don't say that he actually caused the riots, but they imply strongly that he did. They say he provoked widespread consternation. So riots broke out in a predominantly immigrant neighborhood in the northern suburbs of Sweden's capital, Stockholm. The neighborhood was the scene of riots in 2010 and 2013. But of course, there's no problem with immigrants. No, the problem is with Donald Trump. And they say it went on for 4 hours. The crowd burned about a half dozen cars, vandalized several shop fronts, threw rocks at police. They beat up a photographer for the local newspaper, stole his camera. But, you know, these people are not bad. They're just misunderstood, right? They say Sweden took the greatest number of immigrants per capita. They say integration has been a success story there. This is the way Washington Post is spinning it. Save for incidents like Monday night. So they can't deny that these riots happened because they just happened. So immediately as it comes out, they try to spin it back and say, no, this is an outlier. This is an aberration. This really isn't characteristic of what's going on. We're going to show you that it truly is. They say that these things have happened in highly segregated neighborhoods. Yes. Why are they segregated? Well, they bring Muslims in because they know that Muslims are going to remain segregated culturally, religiously, and legally. They try to segregate themselves. They self-ghettoize in these areas, and that creates a problem for the next generation. We're going to get to that in a moment here as well. But of course, the Tucker Carlson show that Trump referred to on Saturday, that Friday night show, featured a filmmaker, Ami Horowitz. Now, he had interviewed a couple of Swedish police officers. This is the point now where first they blame Trump, say he provoked widespread consternation, then we had riots. Then they say, no, it's really been a success. It really isn't a generalized problem. And when this filmmaker talked to these Swedish police officers, they've now recanted. Oh, really? They go on to say the two Swedish police officers whose interview provide the basis for this report spoke out on Monday. And they claim that their testimony had been taken out of context. One of them, Anders Gorazan, said the interview was about areas with high crime rates and that there wasn't any focus on migration or on immigration. No, it's just coincidental that these areas with high crime rates happen to be filled with migrants, as we pointed out yesterday. One of the cities that is one of the most dangerous in Europe has a murder rate 3 times out of Paris or Berlin or London, and it is 43% Muslim, 43% immigrant, 90% Muslim of those immigrants. And then they go on to say Horowitz, however, the filmmaker, defended his work to The Guardian, said he was pretty sure that he told the officers what the segment was going to be about. He implied the officers' disavowal was made under pressure from his superiors. You think that's possible? Well, it's not only possible, but we have seen that. And then they go on to say the Washington Post interviewed multiple criminologists in Sweden that said, oh, the idea that immigrants were responsible for a large proportion of crime there was highly highly exaggerated, and there's no such thing as no-go zones. Remember that it was just February the 6th where we reprinted an article from Spiza, a foreign Swedish newspaper. In it, we had a story from Peter Springar. Now, he is not the person that the Washington Post said recanted it. So we've got two articles at InfoWars, one February the 6th, one from February the 7th this year, just a couple of weeks ago. Two other police officers besides these two who just recanted, I believe under pressure, but these other two guys were the ones that we covered, and they did not recant. And so here's the first one, Peter Springar. He's a police investigator, former deputy head of the Division for Serious Crimes at the police for the police in Orebro. And he reported to the police after he had a post on Facebook where he plainly spoke about what he saw. This is what he wrote. I am so effing tired. What I will write here below is not politically correct, but I don't care. What I will tell you, taxpayers, is forbidden to tell you by us state employees. It results in the loss of career, the loss of individual salaries, even if it's true. I don't care about all this. I will soon retire anyway after 47 years in this business. I will now and every week going forward in detail account for what I, as an investigator of serious crimes unit of the police in Orebro, work with. It will not harmonize with the BRA's statistics, its perception, or other leftist criminologists' perception in the public debate. He said, our pensioners are on their knees. The school is one of chaos. The healthcare is an inferno. Police have been completely destroyed, et cetera, et cetera. Everyone knows why, but no one dares or wants to talk about the reason, because Sweden has always lived on the myth of the magnificent ultimate society that has unlimited resources to be in the forefront when it comes to being the only politically correct option in a dysfunctional world. So he goes, here we go. In the last week, I've handled Monday through Friday rape, aggravated rape, assault, rape, extortion, blackmail, abuse of judicial procedure, threats, violence against the police, threat to the police, drug trafficking, so forth and so on. He goes, and the perpetrators are people with the name of Ali Muhammad Ali, again and again and again. And then Christopher, oh, wait, that's a Swedish name. That was a drug offense. Then Mahmoud Ali, again and again. And so he goes on with this. Then after that, we had a second police officer come out and underscore that. We had the article on February the 7th. Remember back in September of 2016, we had the video. There is no turning back, a Swedish TV ad that said that Swedes must accept multiculturalism. You look at that picture there, the woman in the hijab. And of course, that video has now been flushed from the internet, just as they would like to flush InfoWars and the rest of us who report on this. They took that back. And this is the text from their video. They said, there is no turning back. Sweden will never be what it was before. It is an understanding of what the world actually looks like. Sweden is needed as a place for people who need refuge, and so forth and so on. It's time to realize that new Swedes will take up room with cultures, languages, customs, and it's time that we see this as a positive force. So you have to understand, this is the globalist program that people in Germany, some have called the Great People Replacement, going back to what Bertolt Brecht said. When he looked across at East Germany, of course, he was a communist. He had a lot of faith in communism, and you had people in East Germany trying to get a higher minimum wage. What do? They call the police out, beat them down, and he said, well, I guess it's easier to replace the people than it is to replace the people, the people who govern us. And that is what is happening in Europe. It is a great people replacement. They want to replace the people, their culture, etc. And then on the day that this came out, this last Friday, the day that Tucker Carlson interviewed the filmmaker, we had a story from Stephen Crowder. Frightened Swedes wear bulletproof vests because of terrorism, but Parliament cracks down. He says it's apparent now that citizens have started turning to bulletproof vests for self-defense, but Parliament members are having none of it. Just a few weeks ago, a bulletproof vest saved the life of an 18-year-old in Malmo. That's the city I was talking about earlier. And more people buy and wear bulletproof vests. So the chairman of the Swedish Parliamentary Defense Committee demanded that individuals be prohibited from wearing a bulletproof vest. Why? Because even something that can't hurt somebody else, they don't want you to be able to defend yourself. And as he pointed out, it's the same argument that we have against gun control. If you want to try to defend yourself, they take that down. And today we have an article, we're about out of time, ISIS boasting that Muslims born in the U.S. will become an army of conquest. Of course they will. As I said earlier, they self-ghettoize, and that's the issue for the second generation. What we're going to find is that there's going to be a much higher percentage of radicals in the second generation than there were in the people who originally came here, because the resentment of the ghetto that they were raised in.
In case you haven't heard, InfoWars has become the most influential media outlet in America. We're making freedom go viral. And now we are proud to announce a new weapon in the epic battle against the globalists. InfoWars Prime, where you can watch live high-definition feeds of The Alex Jones Show, plus exclusive insider videos from the InfoWars crew and behind-the-scenes action. Go to Infowars.com/app and download today. InfoWars Prime is available right now for your iPhone or Android. You will have access to exclusive videos that you can't see anywhere else. And that means live coverage of events and breaking news on location as it happens. You can also take advantage of amazing deals from the InfoWars store that are only available for InfoWars Prime subscribers. That's InfoWars Prime at Infowars.com/app. And if you can hear my voice, you are the resistance.